Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the QCast. And I've got such a big smile on my face because today we have a cast with a man who is a veritable legend in the fields of business advice and personal development, the one and only Mr. Peter Thomson. Peter, it's a privilege and honor, and just so delighted to be chatting with you here today.
It's lovely to be talking to you too, Steve, and thank you for those lovely words to start with. Legend. I don't think I've often been called that. My leg end occasionally, but not legend. So,
well,
great to be with you.
Well, you're still in, after all these years, you know, I've been following you since oh my goodness, since the early 90s. And I think you'd been around before then. And you're still in the game, and you're still producing leading edge material, and you're still helping and inspiring people. So that makes you a legend in my book.
Thank you, my friend. I think I've just got a parcel coming to the door. Won't be a second.
Get your parcel.
It wasn't the parcel. It was the window cleaner.
The window cleaner. We could have the Royal Mail. We could have Amazon Prime. We could have Waitrose or Tesco's, depending who you shop with. We don't mind. Harrods, maybe. Do they deliver?
I really don't know.
I would expect no less from you, Mr. Thomson. So, yeah, as we were saying, you've been around in this business of personal development, business advice, helping businesses, helping entrepreneurs, helping people to be the best version of themselves for a long, long time. I'm gonna guess the thick end of 45, 50 years in the game.
50 years in business altogether, and in this particular type of business, about 32 years since I sold my last business and semi-retired for a little while. Yes, that's right.
Wow. So I just wanted to start for anybody who doesn't know you, which won't be many people who watch this, but if no one's familiar with you, just tell us about the early years in Peter Thomson's life and career, you know, after you left school or university, whatever you did. What was the first business? What was your first foray into the world of entrepreneurship, Peter?
Well, I've been taught really that I needed a proper job, open quotes. And so I started working in the bank, and I soon got fed up with that because the only progression was dead men's shoes. So that didn't work for me. So I then tried my hand at a bit of selling, and I worked for a company selling carbon paper and typewriter ribbons. And then I became a private detective. Right.
Wow.
And I was tracing absconded debtors and doing investigations and all the rest of it. And I'd done that. And I was working with a strange character in Birmingham. And one day I went to him because it just wasn't working for him or for me. And I'd got 5 wages checks bouncing. And I said to him, I said, look, here's the deal. Very, very simple. Either this becomes a partnership and you give me half the business, or I'm going today. And he said, well, I can't give you half the business. I said, well, it's okay. We'd make a fortune if you did, but that's your choice. And so I left and I set up my own business as a private investigator on the 2nd of February, 1972.
Wow.
And within a couple of years, we were being asked to trace, this is the real number, Steve. This is just absolute truth here, as always from me. 4,000 people a month we were being asked to trace.
Wow.
We were the biggest tracing agency in Europe, and the majority of our clients were people like stores, credit card companies. I specialized in shopkeepers. So my clients were people like Cadbury's and Rowntree's and Carreras Rothman and American Tobacco and All White's Lemonade and Schweppes and Mars and all those sorts of people. And the reason I did that, Stephen, this was a real lesson for me in business, was that if I could find somebody once, but be asked by more than one client for that person's details, I could sell the information a second time. So I was getting paid more than once for the same idea. And I also learned another major lesson in business during that period, which was risk reversal. right? Often talked about these days, guarantees and risk reversal. But I would go to my clients and I would say to them, or potential clients, I'd say, look, here's the arrangement. Why don't you send me the inquiries that you've sent to other people and they can't find them? And I will only charge you if I find them, nothing at all if I don't. However, if I find them, you then start using me. Of course, that was an irresistible offer. So straight away, people said, well, nothing to lose. Yeah, here's 5, 10 of them, have a go at these. And of course, we knew what we were doing. We're pretty reasonable at it. So we actually went off and we found them. And that's the way we captured business. And we continued working with our clients on a no-win, no-fee basis. And of course, people who are other investigators were usually ex-police, which I wasn't. They would say, well, how can you do the work for nothing? And the reason was they didn't understand the basic numbers of business, which was, if you were asked to do 10 cases and you found, let's say, 6 of them, which we were about 60% average, and you were getting paid £4 to find somebody. Remember, this is a long time ago, Steve.
Yeah.
Right? £4 to find somebody and nothing if you didn't. Then for every 10 cases, you got 40 quid. But you didn't. You only got paid on 6 of them. So you got £24. So divide by the 10, you're actually getting £2.40 a case. So knowing your business numbers, that it was £2.40 a case in effect, not £4 and nothing, meant that you could budget for the costing and still make a profit. So that's how we work. Yeah. So we built to 4,000 inquiries in 2 years, which was fantastic. I sold it to the staff. I got involved in bugging and debugging and all sorts of things. I was in the early days of car phones when it was press to speak, release to listen. I can tell you some great stories about that. And from there, I set up a leasing company back in 1982. So it was 10 years after that. And 5 years later, I sold it for 4.2 million and I retired. And then one day I sat down, and I'll tell you more about that if you want me to, and said to myself, what do I love to do? And what I love doing, as you probably gather from this morning, I love talking. And so I set up a business sharing my knowledge, my experience, my expertise, and what I call the magic ingredient. And I started in the tapes business and seminars. And I went to Nightingale Conant with a completed product. And I said, will you sell this? And they said, well, it's a bit salesy for us. We don't do much of that at the moment. But would you revoice lead the field for us? And that was like being asked to rewrite the Bible, because it was their main.
You're actually reeling off my notes of questions.
Oh, am I? Sorry, forgive me.
No, but they're in no particular order. But I'm not even looking at them. But when I just made a few notes in case I dried up, that's all. Last night, I know you. So Lead the Field is a classic. It's a staple personal development program, created and first voiced by Earl Nightingale, right?
Right, yes.
Who was with Lloyd Conant, one half of Nightingale Conant, yeah? So right. I was going to ask you, how did all this come about? Because at one time, are you not credited with being the most prolific producer of these types of programs, certainly in the UK, for Nightingale Conant?
Well, not for Nightingale Conant, for actually myself as well as Nightingale Conant. So I made this big program, Steve, called Action is the Key. It was cassettes, and it was 15 boxes with 2 cassettes in each. So it was 30 cassettes. Yeah. And it used to sell for £300, right? And I went to Nightingale Conant with it, but I went with the marketing material as well, not just the program, not just an idea, but a completed program. Yeah. And they said, look, we love it, Peter. We do really, really like it, but it's just because it was focused on sales, they said it's not what the market we're in. So what I revoiced Lead the Field. And of course, Lead the Field contains the one thing which is The Strangest Secret from Earl Nightingale. Yeah. The Strangest Secret on disc sold over 1 million copies. I've seen the gold disc hanging in their Chicago office, right? Fantastic, all right? And so I revoiced this for them, and that went really well. And so they said, well, what about doing some more? So I did some more. I did Conversation, the Power of Persuasion, Accomplishment, Science and Practice, Vocab Power, all sorts of various other programs. We became really great friends, both with Dave Hughes, who ran Nightingale in the UK, and Vic Conant himself. lovely, lovely company to deal with. Really straightforward, honest guys. You know, really people I really enjoyed working with. But I realised something, Steve, which was this: because of royalties, they sold one of my programs. In fact, I'll show it you. They sold of this one about 35,000 copies, right? This one, which was Conversation, the Power of Persuasion. Yeah?
Yeah. I bought that.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
I was one of those punters. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I worked out what the income of that was, and good luck to them. It was about $2.5 million, right? And I probably got, I don't know, about $100,000, right? And I looked at those two numbers and I went, 100,000, 2.5 million, maybe I should produce my own. Right?
Maybe.
And, maybe, light bulb. And so I started making my own programs, and I went crazy writing books, tips, booklets, audio programs, videos, you name it. Yeah. And that's really, I suppose, where I started to, I'll say, make my name. I don't really mean it in that way. In this business that we're in, of helping people to either capitalize on opportunities or solve problems. Yeah. And I've been doing that for 30 odd years with businesses, but mostly with coaches, consultants, speakers, trainers, professionals, those sort of people who are really out there making a real difference, you know. So.
And so what was your sort of first, was it maybe Earl Nightingale, as it was for me, actually, that Stranger's Secret?
Yeah.
So there was a little blue box like that one you've got there, but this was a 2 cassette box. It had the Stranger's Secret cassette, and it had Think and Grow Rich, condensed version, read by Earl Nightingale. And I don't know how I came across this, but I bought this in the early 90s. And this was my first introduction to quotation, personal development. Yeah. And Earl Nightingale was the best person. I remember talking to Bob Proctor in a podcast a couple of years ago. And I asked him what Earl was like, because he worked for him. He had his office next door as VP of sales at Nightingale Conant in Chicago. And he was telling me that he was very stoical, very serious, really walked his talk. He said he wasn't a slap you on the back guy. That was more Vic Conant, you know. But I said, when I heard these cassettes, that really resonated with me. Not only the content, but his voice. It's almost like this avuncular, this rich, you know, Bob Proctor, he goes, well, if God had a voice.
That's right. It would have been Earl Nightingale.
Yeah.
And as you said, it was Lloyd Conant and Earl set that business up, right? Because Earl was the voice of radio, wasn't he? He was he called Sky King? He was the voice of Sky King on American radio, which is just
amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah. So the first one I got a piece of direct mail from Nightingale Conant. Learned so much from these people. This was 1985. And I had this piece of direct mail, and I was a reader anyway, but it was the first introduction to audio cassette tapes, learning. And it came through, and of course it was on risk-free totally. You could send for it, no charge. And if you liked it, you paid for it. And if you didn't like it, you could send it back again. And I thought, well, that's something to learn in business straight away, risk reversal. And so I sent for it, listened to it, just blew me away. Wow, I loved it. Yes, I was playing it in the car all the time. It's fantastic. And then I just got into audio programs. And I remember having a clear out at my home in Leamington. And I had 267 cassette programs because I was just an audio junkie, because I just learned so much. And of course, I know, we did same mindset. And from there, what I did was started off with Nightingale making introductions for me. I interviewed 172 people, many of them Nightingale Conant authors, and got to meet so many great people who shared their ideas with me, which was just brilliant, which is how I ended up setting up my audio newsletter. You know, that's the way that these things goes around.
I would love that Brian Tracy said years ago, he said, you can literally, you know, when we worked cassettes, before streaming, cassettes and CDs, he said, you can literally turn your car into a university. And it's true.
Yeah, university on wheels. I remember it well.
It's absolutely true, isn't it? So speaking speaking of Bob Proctor, I know when you and I have spoken before, you did stuff with Bob, didn't you? You had a relationship. You worked with him. So tell us about that, please.
With the Achiever's Edge, which was what my audio newsletter was called, this opened the door for me to so many people, because I would phone up people the way you and I would do this, Steve, and I would say, I would like to interview you, but I would only ask them for 20 minutes. Right? And I would say in that 20 minutes, because this was the ideal driving time, the average journey time was 20 minutes in the UK. So that's why I decided on 20-minute interviews, and the whole cassette was only 72 minutes anyway. So I would ask for a 20-minute interview and I would get to meet them. So I did this with Bob and we had a great conversation together. He was in Canada and I was at home and I recorded. I had to buy some special equipment to do all these interviews. And then he came over to the UK and he was running a 1-week course. I think one of his riches programs, how to get rich, or
something like the science of getting rich.
Exactly right. The science of getting rich. And I contacted him because I knew he was coming. And I said, could I interview you again? And he said, yeah, great. So I went down to see him, and with the delegates, we had a bit of lunch together. We went off to a side room and we did the interview, and he and I got on really well. And he said to me, would you like to speak on the seminar this afternoon? I said, yeah, of course I will. Right. What do you want me to do? He said, pick any of your key stuff and I know it'll be good. Just carry on, do it. So I did some of my key things, the magic matrix and various bits. Anyway, it went down really well and Bob loved it. And he said to me, will you come to Canada and speak to my 3% club and do this same stuff? And as it happens, I was going on holiday, I think it was Antigua or somewhere. And I said, yeah, I'll put it in the same trip. I've got to go to Chicago to see Nightingale. I can fit it all in. And I went over and did this 3% club, which was great, lovely people. And what a great guy Bob Proctor is. I mean, just one of the giants of the industry, wasn't he? You know,
oh, yeah.
Earl Nightingale, Brian Tracy, obviously Tony Robbins, obviously Bob Proctor. I mean, even when you talk about the marketing side, Jay Abraham, but really for me, on the marketing, #1 in the world was Ted Nicholas.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he was the man as far as I was. The stuff I learned from Ted Nicholas, just amazing.
Unbelievable, yeah. World's highest paid and one of the pioneers of the self-publishing industry, yeah. A friend of mine used to work with him actually at some point, yeah, promoting him in the UK and doing stuff. So yeah,
lovely guy, lovely man.
You know when you came to meet Bob Proctor, when you say you went down, was that in Southampton or close to Portsmouth somewhere?
Winchester.
I was there.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was there. I saw you talk about the Magic Matrix. I was delighted because I was already familiar with you. This was in about 1999 or 2000, right?
With that sort of time, yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It was, because I tell you what it was. I first became aware of Bob when somebody gave me a cassette, which must have been copied 1 million times. And she was a Niken distributor, and Bob's wife was a big hitter in Niken. Yeah, Linda Proctor.
Linda, yeah.
And when I heard him speak, it was just something different, you know, it really resonated with me. And then I saw an advert one day in the Sunday Times, business to business. That used to be great. So it's gone now. It's about that big, but it used to be 2 pages. And I'm looking on all these adverts and it said, Bob Proctor, Science of Getting Rich. So I rang straight away and I got facilitated in coaching all of his programs, the Goal Achiever, the Mission and Commission, You Were Born Rich. And so I spent a lot of time with him, but I was there down at that place twice. He came over the first time, and then the second time was a guy, Tim and Sandra brought him over.
Tim Rampton and Sandra Rampton.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
They were friends of mine. What a small
Isn't
world.
Isn't it a small world that we just discover that on this Zoom call? So how many books have you authored, Peter, or including the tip sheets and that? How many have you done?
I'll just show you a picture. This will give you an indication of how many. This is the easiest way. So here's me, probably carrying a bit more weight, but here's me, if you can see that. These are my programs, or at least some of them, yeah?
Yeah.
So, right, so I think it's Just a few. So I think it's about 7 books, about 15 tips booklets, at least 100 audio programs, at least 100 video programs, wow. White labels, I mean, it's just, that's what I do. I'm very fortunate to have a head that takes ideas and makes them simple. That's really my skill, I think, is to take an idea, look at it and say, how can I show someone how to do that? And how can I give them a template so that they can take it away and use it immediately? Because the frustration in this industry that we're in, and frustration for everybody, is that you show somebody how to do something and they get it, but they don't actually put it into action.
I think I completely get what you're saying. And I think it boils down to, Earl Nightingale said it best about Think and Grow Rich. He said, it's put in a way that somebody can understand intellectually and also emotionally. And if you can get it emotionally, it kind of becomes part of your DNA. And then you've got every chance of being able to deploy and implement, right?
Too true. I think an expression often used in this industry, isn't it, is long-term change happens at the identity level. Not at the activity level, at the identity level. And, if you think about Robert Dilts and the Dilts pyramid, and I did a thing about 25 years ago that reflected the same idea. And basically with the Dilts pyramid, the results were, whatever results you got, were results of the actions you took. And you took those actions because you had the skills and the capabilities. And you did that because you got the beliefs and values. But the top of that pyramid, right at the top there, was the word identity, which people don't often talk about. But I have an expression for it, Steve, which is this, is people will never consistently do who they aren't. And what I mean by that is that who somebody is, their beliefs, their values, their identity, that's who they are. And if you ask someone to do something that mismatches their identity, they might do it fractionally, but they'll soon fade back to themselves. Unless you can get the new skill, the new idea, the new method as part of their identity, they're never going to use it long term, because the flip of the expression is true. People will consistently do who they are. So this is what people do. People do who they are. They live in accord with their identity, and they do that easily all day long. Which, if you think back to Michael Gerber, or Michael E. Gerber as it now is, Michael said, didn't he, in his books, Entrepreneurial Myth, the E-Myth and all those, that what you needed was an extraordinary system, both as an individual and a business, that would allow ordinary activity and ordinary people to generate extraordinary results. It was XOX, not OXO. It wasn't an ordinary system, so you had to be extraordinary all the time. You could be yourself as long as you had a darn good system in which you worked, because being yourself was the thing you can do easily. Being somebody other than who you are is the thing that most people can't do, obviously. I can't do that. You can't do it consistently. Even the best footballers in the world don't score in every game. I mean, it doesn't work. You have a cracking system to allow you to be your best. That's what works for me.
Oscar Wilde said, show up as yourself because everyone else has taken.
I know
something like that. But it's true, isn't it? You have this image, or this self-image is your identity, and your behavior will always, you can use force, you can use sheer willpower and determination, and that will push it for a while, but it's like a rubber band. It will always pull you back to the type of behavior and results which is most consistent with that self-image, right?
Yes. I like that, the idea of the rubber band. I shall nick that. Thank you very much indeed. It'll pull you back.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So what, for anybody in business today, some people are going to have a mindset that today is so tumultuous, so full of uncertainty and all that stuff. And some people are going to have a mindset of, wow, what a lot of opportunities there are right now. What mindset advice to anybody in a business or starting out in a business would you give for today, Peter? Today?
Right. Certainly. Can I blend into that a couple of little money-making ideas as we talk about
anything you like?
Okay, fantastic. Right. So I think from a mindset point of view is that to realize that we individually are obviously unique. Yep. I just qualified the word unique there, but you can't actually qualify the word unique. Unique means one. That's it, all right? There's an expression that's often used in training and in consultancy, and it's sui generis, the Latin expression, sui generis, which means effectively, rough translation, a category of one. So I think what we have to create for ourselves in order to stand out from the noise, whether that noise is created by a pandemic, whether it's created by weather, whether it's created by war, whatever it's created by, to stand away from that noise, you have to create for ourselves, which is commonly called sui generis, or a category of one. If we're involved in consultancy or coaching or that type of industry, then again, we've got to separate ourselves from the crowd by creating a niche for ourselves in which we are that one person, or one of few, but preferably just one. And then when we do that, we make it easier for people to find us, and make it easy for ourselves to find the people that match with who we are. So if I said, for example, I teach people how to park their car in Birmingham, as long as you're aged over 60, suddenly I've got a niche market. Right, I've got people over 60 who need to park the car in Birmingham, right? Now, there might not be very many of them, but they're probably prepared to pay quite well because there's not many of them and it's a specific skill. Obviously, Steve, I don't teach people how to park cars, but you've got the idea. You've got the idea of it. So then you can start to separate yourself from the marketplace. One of the ways you do that is by having a strap line. If you're an individual running a consultancy type business, we need a strap line underneath our name to separate us from the crowd. So I've used a few. When I used to do lots of consultancy, I would say, Peter Thomson, the UK's leading strategist on business and personal growth. Well, who says so? Well, I do. Because I believe it, and it was. I didn't say I'm business owner. I didn't say I'm personal owner. I linked the two together to make it a little niche. Today, I would say, because I'm often in the product creation stuff, I'm the UK's most prolific information product creator, because it's true. It's true, right?
Can't argue with that.
We can't argue with that. So there we go. So firstly, it's creating that niche. Then it's having the mindset, and this is a mindset thing, is number one, to have a level of confidence. The way I say it is like this. You've got to live in a little village just north of confidence, just south of arrogant, right? Just south of arrogant. So you've got to be confident, not cocky, but confident in your ability to deliver on the marketing promises you make.
Makes sense.
Because the three factors that run for me that create success for people is, number one, they have to have a belief, right, in the product or service and its efficacy. It must do the thing it's supposed to do. That you individually have a confidence to deliver it and a confidence in yourself. And the third thing, what we were just touching on, you must be aligned with who you are. Back to what we were just saying. So it's ABC: alignment, belief, and confidence, right? Not attitude, belief, and confidence. Alignment, belief, and confidence. So when we add to that, the way I come at it to be successful in business is this: learn how to sell, then stop selling, and allow people to buy.
Just taken another one off my list.
Oh, sorry.
Did I scan it? I think I scanned this to you last night.
No, you didn't. Well, no, I
was coming to that. I was going to say, we touched on selling earlier, and I know that you are famous, very well known in your seminars and in your books and in your lectures for saying we don't so much sell to people, but we allow people to buy from us. And I was going to ask you to expand on that philosophy, if you wouldn't mind.
I will, because I think it's critical, is that if we go around trying to convince people, then that almost creates an adversarial environment. For me, it's very consultative and it's very soft. And so I don't try and convince people. I do my best to be convincing. Now, these words, Steve, are so easy to say, and yet really to understand them at a visceral level, to get deep inside your DNA, back to identity, takes some good thinking, because once that happens, that light bulb goes on, business and life changes. And I tell you how it changes. You care if you make a sale, but you don't mind if you don't. And the way I think about it is this, is if I'm dealing with somebody and we decide not to do business, it doesn't happen very often, you know, because I'm careful who I speak to, right? It doesn't happen very often. So my inner feeling is that the only person that suffers there is the other person. It's not going to change my life. One iota. It's not going to change whether we do or don't. You know, I don't mind. I do care, but I don't mind. But it'll change their life because they don't get to know this stuff that I've been fortunate to learn from so many people and apply and polish and hone and change. So learn how to sell, stop selling and allow people to buy. And how do you do that? Well, the way you do it is you treat them as though they've already said yes, not as though they will say yes. So right from the start of every conversation, you treat them as though they're a client. You show them great stuff. You know, as Gordon Herschel Lewis said in his brilliant book, Sales Letters That Sizzle, you fire your big guns first, right? And you show people great stuff, because if you show them your great stuff, they go, wow, this guy knows some fantastic stuff. We want to do more. If you show them the rubbish, they think you're rubbish. Right. And some people have that lack mentality. Well, oh, I'm not going to show them that. Not till they paid me. I'm not going to show them. No, wrong. Totally wrong. Abundance mentality. Show them your good stuff. They will rate you and it will work on from there. So there's that thing. Then to add to that, and this is a real money maker, and I've been doing this for nearly nigh on 50 years, 48 years I've been doing this idea. You have to have a deluxe version of your offering. If you don't have a deluxe version of your offering, you are leaving a fortune on the table, and you're not helping those serious clients who want to go faster, higher, make more money just with you, or whatever is that deluxe version. Go back to the tracing. When I used to have the tracing industry business, £4 trace, nothing, no trace, the basic one. You know, if we couldn't find somebody and the debt was high, I would talk to my clients who trusted me and say, can't find it at that rate. And they knew if I could, I would. I said, but you can have what we call our in-depth service. That's our deluxe service, right? And that was £25, win or lose. So you pay your 25 money, you put your money on the wheel, you spin the wheel. And if I don't find them, you still pay me. So that wasn't contingency. That was my deluxe version. And in the same way today, you know, I have all my various things that I do and mentoring programs, etc. We've got this new one called The Adventurers, but there's always a deluxe version. So if you've got a product that sells at £500 or a service, you need another one that sells at £2,500, or maybe even one that sells at £5,000, right? Yeah. There will be, I've found, between 10 and 20% of your market will want the deluxe version. And the number of people, Steve, that I've shown this to, and they come back to me, they go, I can't believe it. I show everybody my 3 versions and they always pick the deluxe. Surprise,
Mad, isn't
it? Surprise.
I love, you know, when you mentioned the word mindset earlier, that word's got a duality for me, because it's a word which is all too often used, isn't it? It's become a bit of a cliche. You know, get your mindset right. Has he got the right mindset? So there's mindset in terms of, I think we mean attitude, right? Yes. What's his mindset like? What's his attitude like? Yeah. But then there's also that thing of laser focus and having one's mind set, as what Bob Proctor used to say, keeping the main thing always being the main thing, that laser focus. So there's 2 aspects to mindset.
Yes, very much so. There's some stuff I read every morning. In fact, I could even just find it on my computer set and I'll share it with you. And there's a bit that I read in them. I have a number of things that I program my head with. I have this thing called Mind Changers, which a friend of mine, Glenn, put together. And I've added to it over the time. And I read stuff, you know, just to program my head in the morning. And I've got the summary of how to win friends and influence people. There's 30 points in there. And I've got the 30 points listed. I've got them here in front of me. But there's a fabulous bit from Og Mandino, which I have a summary. And he says, it is those who concentrate on but one thing at a time who advance.
And he was the greatest salesman in the world, eh? Part one.
Well, I
part two.
read the both a cracking story. Both
amazing.
I love them.
Absolutely amazing. So tell us about just a little bit about some of the sort of maybe most notable people that you've collaborated with in this career.
Yes, certainly. I tell you one just before the start of this career, who taught me so much in life and in business. And I met this guy through somebody I knew. I was in the leasing business, and we were a leasing broker. That was the business I built and sold. And somebody introduced me to this genius of a guy, and his name was Stephen Blumenthal. And he was the father of Heston Blumenthal, right?
Okay.
And he was a fascinating guy. And I used to meet him. He loved his food. Oh, surprise, surprise. We go and have some great meals together. And he taught me so much about business and focus. And really what he taught me was to think differently. You know, there was a lovely Apple advert, wasn't there, some years ago, think different. We might say think differently here, but think differently. So try and find different and creative ways. So to give you an example of that, Stephen was in the finance industry as a leasing broker. And if you had a client who was at the right level, you know, real quality client, then he could find money for you where you would pay back over a 5-year period less than you borrowed. Now that's creative, right?
That is a USP and a half, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it was all to do with tax shelter leasing. So, you know, those things. So then moving back on from there, the sort of people I met that really made a difference was, you've mentioned some of them. The first one obviously was Ted Nicholas. Ted Nicholas for me was just amazing, man. I spent time with him in the UK. We did a seminar together with Stuart Goldsmith. I went over and met him in America, and when he and his wife Bethany would come, we'd go out for dinner or the theatre or whatever. And so much stuff that he used to do 7 minutes with Ted Nicholas for me on my Achiever's Edge program. Right? I've stayed with him in Switzerland, and I just learned so much from him. The other one from a business point of view was Vic Conant, and just Vic's way. Because Vic, unlike the slap on the back Lloyd, right, his father, is a very calm man, right? And an absolute somebody like his father who, and you said about Earl, who walks his talk. If they teach it, he does it, you know, which makes such a difference to people. And then I think the biggest change in my life was, and you've got to learn from people. Oh no, I'll give you two. One was a guy, and his name was John Collins. And I went to meet him in Birmingham to sell him a car phone. And he said to me, this was the life changer. People say that so easily, Steve. This is a real life changer. And he said, do you do a finance deal, Peter? And I said, no, it's £1,350. And remember, this is way back in, when would this be? 1989-ish, 90. That's it's 1,350 quid plus the fitting. Yeah. And he went, yeah, I'd rather have a leasing. He said, what do you do leasing? I said, no, I don't know about leasing. He said, would you like to? I said, yeah. So anyway, we met up for lunch in a pub somewhere. I can remember where it was. It was on Kings Norton Green. And he explained leasing to me. And I was like, what? This is a license to print money, right? Because instead of having to say to clients, it's £1,350, they would, and this is how I worked out a key thing in business in selling. I'd be able to say to them, if you had a phone in your car, how much time do you think you could probably save instead of having to go to a meeting, or, you know, if there was a problem back at the office, and how many hours do you spend in your car every day? Is it 5 hours? Is it an hour? Is it a couple of hours? And people say, oh, it's a couple of hours. So I'd say, so 10 hours a week. And they go, yeah. And I said, well, my accountant tells me his time, long time ago, is worth £50 an hour. And he's just an accountant. What's your time worth as an entrepreneur? You know, is it £100 an hour? You know, no, at least £100 an hour. I said, okay. So 10 hours a week at £100 worth, you can recapture because you've got a phone in your car. That's £1,000 worth of your time. So if the phone was less than £1,000 a week, it would make sense to have one, wouldn't it? You know, with a big smile, right? And people are saying, well, you know, so, and they say, so how much is it? I'd say, well, allowing for tax relief, which obviously it's got, it's £1 a day. Do you think one would be enough? Right?
I love it. Love it.
And people would do what you did then, and I was doing. They would laugh, and I'd say, "What's your postcode?" Fill it out. And my conversion rate was 95%.
Yeah, you're off to the races with that close, aren't you? Definitely.
Definitely. And I was selling one phone a day, every business day. Myself, apart from my team, I was selling a phone a day, and I was making £1,000 a phone.
Yeah, lovely.
Because it was unreal. So I was making, just on that part, making 20 grand a month.
Yeah.
Selling phone and having a blast and meeting.
Having a blast doing it. Yeah. You reminded me of a guy I met, 10 years ago or something. He used to sell he probably still does. He's up near Harrogate, very successful guy. He sells all the gear for, cafeterias, coffee shops, all of that. Yeah. These great big, wonderful, 4-cup espresso machines. I said, how much are those? He said, I've got no idea. He says, I've never, ever sold one of these. He says, I sell how much it is a month.
That's right.
So you can have one of those for 500 a month, one of those for 200 a month. He said, that's all I do.
Yeah, absolutely right. And always with that contrast, there's an expression of mine. If anybody's in business, take this away, because this is golden. Without contrast, everything sounds expensive or cheap. And you don't know which it is. So unless you take control of the other person's financial thinking in the context of your offering, you are gambling. If you take control of the thinking by the words that you say, and I have an expression for this as well, surprisingly, right? Then you will have far more success, because here's the deal. And I learned this inadvertently and then confirmed it with Robert Cialdini when I met him.
Yeah.
And my version is this. It's what you say before you say what you mean to say that makes the difference. And it's
what you say. Say that again.
Well, I'll say it quickly. There's a whole thing. I'll say it quickly, then I'll slow it down. Right. So start with, it's what you say before you say what you mean to say that makes the difference. And it's also what you do before you do what you mean to do that makes the difference. So if you put the two together, it's what you say and do before you say and do what you really mean to say and do that really makes the difference. Or in other words, right? in Cialdini's words, Bob Cialdini said to me, it's how you create the climate in which ethical persuasion takes place. You create that climate by pre-framing NLP stuff, obviously, by pre-framing somebody's mindset. Because if you said to somebody, Steve, can I just play a little game with you, and this will really bring it to life? Yeah. And you may have seen me do this on stage, actually, if you've seen me do these things. I have this little exercise I do with a tray. I haven't got a tray. I've just got this thing. And I say, look, I'm holding a tray. I'm playing. And I say, look, I've got this tray. It's a polished tray. It's got a black dragon design on it. It's really lovely. And it's for sale in a mid-range department store, right? And I said, just write down for me how much you think it is. And people write down 10 quid, 70 quid, all sorts of different numbers. And I say to them, well, hang on a minute. I describe it in the same way to all the audience, all the market. And yet you've picked different numbers, right? Okay, great. I'll tell you what, then let's change the venue. I'll take the same tray and I'll stick it in a car boot sale. Still brand new. How much you pay for it, right? And people go, oh, well, quid, 50p, £5, that sort of stuff. I say, okay, hang on, you've still got different prices, but now you're all lower. Okay, so what about if we take it into Harrods, right? And you're buying it in Harrods, same tray, brand new. Oh, 350 quid, 500 quid. I've even had somebody say £3,000, and I've done this across the world, right?
Yeah.
I say, well, hang on a minute, it's the same tray. How come you're going to pay different prices? Firstly, everybody pays differently from here to here to here, right? And how come you're all different? Well, the answer to the first question is why you pay different prices in different places. It's pre-framed in your head. It's what was said or did before it actually happened. You walked into Harrods and didn't think it was going to be £2. No. You walked into the car boot sale and didn't think it was £3,000. You know, I mean, it's pre-framed, right? And the other thing is it demonstrates that even the same words at the same time to the same market, people will have a different reaction. Some people will think £1,000 is expensive. Somebody will think £1,000 is cheap. You and I, Steve, could go out on the road today and find someone and give them a tenner and they would think they were wealthy. We could go into any major city and find someone and give them £1 million and they wouldn't think they were any wealthier. It's not the money, it's the frame, it's their reference. So we have to take control of their thinking. And so it's what you bother to say before you say what you mean to say. You know, people say to me, oh, price objections. And I say, price objections are created by what you didn't say earlier, not what you said at the time. It's all about what you don't say first. Anyway, there we go. As you gather,
I think that's brilliant. So Robert Cialdini, obviously, I was going to ask you, but you've kind of told me anyway about who your biggest influencers have been. Clearly, Ted Nicholas there, right at the top. But Robert Cialdini famously wrote a book called Influence, didn't he? He's done another one as well. And so influence is everything, really, in business, in life, isn't it? You know, influence, the ability to influence people ethically and effectively is everything.
Yeah. In fact, one of his other books, a fairly recent book, I mean, his most recent, as we're talking today, is his new version of Influence, Science and Practice. But the one before, he actually called Persuasion rather than Persuasion.
Yes.
And persuasion is all about what we were just talking about, how you create the climate in which ethical persuasion takes place. He says you have to be a detective. You have to find out things, right? And then you've got to say what you need to say. When I was chatting to him, and I said to him, and got on really well, and I said, Bob, there's two words you use a lot. And the two words are before and then. Because you say stuff, you go, da, 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 and then you do this. And I said, it seems to me there's a bit of a timeline here. And something's happening, and then this happens. And he said, absolutely. This is always what it is. It's how you create the climate in which ethical persuasion takes place. So it's taking the time, firstly, not to sell, right? And secondly, to pre-frame somebody's thinking with regard to your pricing to make it realistic rather than cold. You know, because if somebody said, well, how much, okay, Peter, how much does it cost to come and see you? And I say, oh, it's X thousand pounds. And they might go, wow, gosh, that's expensive. Well, that's my fault because I haven't framed the possibilities, the outcome. I haven't put it in a context in which they can understand the pricing.
Of course. There's so much like NLP stuff, like the pre-framing, the language patterns that comes in. I was going to, have you ever met or interviewed Richard Bandler?
I have. I probably out of the actually, I think it's 174 I've done now. I think it was the hardest I ever did. And the reason was, it was my fault. I take responsibility for it. I'd been on the NLP course, my practitioner course with Michael Green, who's fabulous, right? Paul McKenna, great. And Mr. Richard Bandler. Now, it's actually Dr. Richard Bandler, the co-originator of NLP. There's the proper title, right? You have to say that. And it was absolutely brilliant. And so I'd interviewed Paul, I'd interviewed Michael, I'd interviewed Professor Robert Cialdini, and the link went through to Richard Bandler. And so when I went to see him, I went to meet him in London, I thought that it was pretty fairly friendly and all the rest of it. Of course, you know, gather what I'm like. I breezed in, morning, Richard, how you going? You know, sort of thing. And I think I got it wrong. And I think I should have gone in with a little more a deferential approach. So it was pretty hard, I have to say. But I had a good 20 minutes of it. And I learned some good stuff. And it may be apocryphal, but one thing I picked up through that conversation of various was how the name NLP came around. And again, this may be apocryphal, I don't know, it might be just urban legend. But apparently Richard was stopped, Dr. Bandler was stopped by a police officer. Of course, in America, he'd be on this side of the car, wouldn't he, not here, right? And he got his driver and he said, what do you do? And he said, I'm involved in, and he looked in the footwell, and there was a book on neurology, a book on linguistics, and a book on computer programming. And he said, I do neuro-linguistic programming.
Wow, there you go.
And that's supposedly where the name comes from. It may not be
an industry,
but it's still a great story.
So, you know, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here, and particularly about the self-image and all this type of stuff, all revolves around habit. And when I spoke to you a few years ago, I was in the south of Spain. You were in Murcia somewhere. We were on the telephone, and I asked you about, because I always remember going to your seminars or listening to your programs, and it seemed as you had such a love and passion of golf that any golfing analogy or any opportunity you could get or find or create to mention the word golf or a golf course, you would embrace it. And I asked you if you were in Spain playing golf, and you said, no, I've given it up. I don't play anymore. And you were very, very enthusiastic about golf. How did that habit of a lifetime just break and stop?
Great question. Never been asked that before. Thank you. Right, okay. And I think it was a lesson for me from a number of things. Firstly, I'm a bit of an all-out person. You know, it's all or nothing. I'm a bit like that.
Yeah.
And I realise I am like that. And so I was playing probably 3 times a week. I was practicing as well. I was playing off 11. So it was half reasonable. You know, I could have been better, but I was half reasonable. Very good putter. Very good putter. So I could rescue myself. And what happened was I developed this cough.
That's the close in golf, isn't it? The putting.
Yeah, that's the putting. Yeah,
that's the close.
Yeah, how good are you in the last 3 feet? That's what it is, isn't it? Yeah, it's the same in golf and it's the same in selling. Yeah, how good you are in the last 3 feet. And I had this cough, and it was anyway. I went to see a doctor, went to see a specialist. They found a little lump in my lung. They said it's whether we should or shouldn't take it out, we're not sure, but we think we probably should. So anyway, decided to have the operation. It was what they call an heroic operation. And it meant I couldn't play for 6 months, right? Because they had to go in through my back. Anyway.
Okay.
Right. So I couldn't play for 6 months because while I was healing, right? And when I went back, I realized I hadn't missed it in the 6 months. And I think I'd changed my identity. Right, I think I was no longer Peter Thomson golfer, because you probably know, Steve, with golf, there's a very famous golfer called Peter Thomson, name spelled exactly the same in Australia, won the Open 6 times. And when I was a kid, I used to cut his name out of the newspapers because I had my own name in print. Right? I stick it on my exercise books.
Wow.
Right? So I must have embedded the identity of being a golfer. Right?
Yeah, I'll bet you did. Yeah.
And so when that identity changed in that 6 months, because I couldn't play, after the first time I went back, I went, no, I've done this. Don't do this anymore. That'll do. And so I stopped totally, because I'm just a bit that way, you know. I do or I don't. It's I don't like to do things half-heartedly. I like to be totally committed, because I think back to that comment by Ogmandino. What was he actually say? I should know. I read it every single day. Right. It is those who concentrate on but one thing at a time who advance.
That's very interesting, though. You know, when you said you used to take Peter Thomson's name and put it on your exercise book as a school kid. This guy is a champion golfer. And when a lot of the time when you read about people, or, you know, you hear someone like Tony Robbins maybe talking about Stallone or something like that, all these people, when they were younger or pre-success, pre-fame, they used to act as the person and get into the character of the person that they later became.
Yeah, it's modeling, isn't it? NLP calls it modeling, right? And it's exactly that. And I think the great thing I've learned, I've been so lucky in life, Steve, is I am a lifelong learner. So I always used to read, but to read, to go on seminars, to listen to audio in the car, and then meet all of these fantastic people and get to ask them all these great questions and say to them, tell me, how'd you do that? And then as Zig Ziglar said, I never got to meet or interview Zig, but I love one of his expressions, which says, it's what you learn today gives value to what you learned yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's so great, isn't it? Because you get this bit and you get this bit and you put them together and suddenly you've got this amazing idea, you know, that just takes you forward into a whole different way. I tell you, another influence for me was Jay Abraham.
Yeah.
He was running a seminar in Los Angeles, which I got to know about. And I think it was $5,000 a head. And this is a long time ago. I mean, this was like, what the $5,000? You're joking, right? And it was a 3-day seminar in Los Angeles. And of course, that's a long way from the UK, as you know. Anyway, I knew who the people who were running it was Nightingale Conant. And so I got in as a guest, so I didn't have to pay, but I had to pay the flights, and I'm tall, so, you know, I can't go economy because my knees are at my chin. And so I had to go over to there and a hotel. I was out in the country for, 7 days. and I had a great time. And I got to meet Jay as well. It was fabulous. And people said to me when I came back, they said, was it worth it? You know, 7 weeks, a lot of money and all this. I said, yeah, I got to learn a load of stuff I already knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that, don't you?
Exactly.
One of the things I learned, which was I'd already been taught by Ted Nicholas, but it hadn't properly sunk in, was the 3 key questions of business growth. You know, how do we increase the number of customers? How do we increase the average order value? How do we increase the average order frequency? Right? And then when Nightingale brought Jay to the UK, I hosted 6 3-day events for him. Right, so I was there full time for 3 days, 6 times, and a 5-day course as well. And we ended up doing a program together called, it's in here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Fire Your Boss and Hire Yourself. And it was me and Jay Abraham. We did this program.
Famous program. Great title.
Yeah, for Nightingale Conant.
Yeah,
and so he was very influential because on those events, I would MC the whole thing, but I also had a slot that I would do as well. Did the Magic Matrix, various other things, and I picked up so many clients, and all of that was from pulling one thread. Was bothering to go to Los Angeles and invest that money and time, and then what spins out of that. You know, and I think that's a real lesson, isn't it? Is that sometimes, I know it's true for me, I can be a bit resistant. Oh, can I be bothered doing that? I think, Peter, you never know where it's going to lead you. You know, just invest that time, invest that effort. You know, it's like learning. You know, we're into lifelong learning. The stuff I've learned for tuppence, you know, you buy a book and it's like 10 quid or something.
Let me ask you a question. This has just sprung to mind from what you've said, because I can't tell you how much on the page I am with you there, 1,000,000%. Yeah. And I find now, particularly like, you know, someone will contact me in LinkedIn or Facebook about business, or, you know, they want to sell me something, or they're interested in me or whatever. So they send you a text message and I say something back like, absolutely delighted to discuss any possibilities. Send me your number. Here's my number. Let's have a chat. Yeah. You either get nothing, or they send you another text back, which seems as if they've not actually taken on, but assimilated that you want a phone call with them to chat. Yeah. And then I had somebody the other week, and I said, I was being a bit facetious, you know. I said, look, if you're one of these people who is, you know, text only, completely hands off, afraid to have a conversation, in a real conversation with somebody, I ain't your boy. No. And she sent me a message back saying, yeah, that's how things used to be done, Steve. But now, you know, it's like she was trying to say I'm an old fart or something like that. Well, maybe I am if you ask my kids. But you know what? Text messages are great for certain things, you know. An email's great for certain things, but in a phone call or a face-to-face, you get humor, you get contrast, you get context, you get all these, you get that third mythical sort of brain that comes up with all these ideas, inspirations, insights, intuitions that you just, so I just wondered what your take on that was.
Oh, 100%. I tell you why. I've got a spin on this. Go back to Jay Abraham. I've spent a lot of time with Jay over the years, and I noticed that I would ask him a question, and he's like me and you. He can talk forever, right? I mean, you know, he can sit on a stage, stand on a stage, and say, there are 17 ways to get referrals, right? Now, in the top of his mind, he does not know there are 17. He just has complete and utter faith and so much depth of knowledge that he knows he'll find them, right? And he'll go, so number one, it says chat number two, and he just keep going. So I would ask him questions, and about 20 minutes in, there would be a golden nugget. And I would go, thank goodness I turned up today, right? I will make a note of that, right? And you don't get that in text. You don't get that always. You don't always get it in Zoom. We get it, Steve, because of the way we work together and link together, because we're good conversationalists, right? So we're just happy to chat away as if we were across the table. But sometimes for people, especially when there's a few people in the room, that doesn't work for them. But you can't beat face-to-face communication where you've got a human talking to a human. And so I'm a big tick in that box. 100% I am.
It's interesting.
I have a webinar that I do called a webinar series actually called, ever so simple name, Sell on Zoom, right? It's got how to at the front, but how to sell on Zoom, because people do need to learn how to sell on Zoom, because this type of communication, despite the fact that we are now, as we record, in a better time than we might have been a couple of years ago, Zoom is here to stay. You know,
I was using Zoom a long time before, you know, pre-pandemic, because it makes so much sense in certain circumstances. If we want to have a quick face-to-face, we don't want to spend 2 hours on the, you know, M40, the M1, drink the Hilton's overpriced crap coffee and biscuits, and then drive back and get stuck in a traffic jam in an accident. We don't want to do that, do we? You know, but,
it's not worth it for that half an hour. No, it has its place.
It's not really. So just sort of coming up to wrap up here, you are very, very well known, and I think you've got thousands of subscribers, and I'd just like you to let everybody know the Achievers Edge, the Achievers Club. Yeah, how's that work for anyone who doesn't know, and what do they get?
Excuse me, just somebody at the door. I won't be a second. Okay?
No problem.
I won't be a second, and I will do it. Okay.
This guy, Peter, has so much depth and breadth of knowledge. It's unbelievable. And he's going to explain about one of his resources in a moment, which is something that I think everybody should take advantage of. If you've not heard of it, try it. Sorry, I'm just talking to the camera rather than leave a void. I was just saying about your depth and breadth of knowledge, and how a lot of your ideas and philosophies and case studies are in the Achievers Club, yeah?
Yes, indeed. And what we did was we had the Achievers Edge, which was the newsletter, but we converted it to now it's an online monthly live web meet, but also with a resource.
Yeah.
So I meet everybody, funny if it's next week, I meet everybody who are members for an hour and a half, once a month, right? And we go through, particularly focus on business growth, sales, marketing, product creation, a little bit of personal development as well, but basically, open quotes, money making, that type of thing.
Sure.
And then we have this resource, the Achievers Hub, as well, where there's loads of the interviews stored that we've been talking about, various templates and all the rest of it. And the best thing is, if somebody wanted details of that, is to just drop an email to, and I'll say it out loud because my name's spelled, it's success@peterthomson.com.
And I'll put a link in the description on this on the YouTube when it goes up.
Lovely, because the Thomson doesn't have a P, but it has the H, so it's like Yellow Pages, Thomson Yellow Pages. So it's success@peterthomson.com. Just mention the Achievers Club, and what we'll do is we'll send you a link, and you can come and try it for like Topless Halfpenny, you know, come and see if it's for you. Because I always like to do business in that way. I like to say to people, you know, come and see what for yourself, see if it's what you like.
Yeah.
But the big thing that we're doing at the moment, Steve, is we've got a new program that we've done called The Adventurers. And the strap line is the courage to succeed. And it's a very small group, right? So, but there's a virtual version of it. Mm-hmm. So if anybody was interested in that, we meet for 2 days every quarter. And then in the intervening months, we have catch-ups online as well. So it's a combination of live and live on Zoom, yeah? If anybody wants to, I have to speak to everybody on that one, because I've got to know personally that it's good for them and it's good for me and it's good for the other members. Mm. But if somebody's really serious about taking their business to the next level, then I'd love to have a conversation with somebody. Again, success@peterthomson.com. Just say, like to speak to Peter about the Adventurers. And Rachel, my PA, who's worked with me for 36 years, by the way, she will organise for us to have a Zoom together, and you can tell me about your business, and I can see if I can help you on that call as well, because you've gathered the way I am. And then we'll see if the Adventurers is right for you. And it price-wise, I won't talk about prices on this, but you'll be amazed how low it is. Oh, that was a nice frame.
Well, I actually came on that webinar, and I was contacted because it popped up in my inbox, and I was contacted by Rachel. I know she's worked with you for, as you say, for years and years. A bit like Gina with Bob Proctor, 34, 35 years.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
Same sort of dynamic there.
Yeah.
And but Rachel didn't know me. And so I said, look, you know, this is the reason. I just it's always great to see Peter again, blah, blah. I said, but I'm not your boy for, you know, she said, well, do you want to have a chat with Peter anyway? See what comes of it. I said, do I want to have a chat with Peter Thomson? Absolutely. Yeah. So, and this is what's come of it. And it's been great. You know, it's been really, really, I've enjoyed this so much. It's given me such a buzz. Thank you so much, Peter. And just one final thing. Are there any other opportunities in the Peter Thomson organization that people should be aware of?
The big thing is that we show people how to take their knowledge, their experience, their expertise, and what I call the magic ingredient, which is their take on it, by the way. Money is in your take. And we show them how to either turn that into a book, turn it into a mentoring program, whatever it might be. So, for example, with the adventurers, to give you an example, the adventurers is we focus on making people £100,000 of extra profit. Now, they can decide on the time frame, right? Yeah. So it can be a year, 2 years, 3, it can be whatever they want it to be, subject to where they are in business. But it's an absolute feet to the fire, make you accountable, so you actually put the stuff into play. So if you want to share your knowledge with more people, if you want to grow your business, that's our absolute focus. So, and we can do that in a variety of ways. I have my private client practice, right? But I only work ever with 5 people at one time, and I'm doing that at the moment. So it could be something in the future if somebody wanted to chat to me about that. I don't have a space at the moment, but if they, if they want to do it, again, success@peterthomson.com. Tell us what you want to talk about, and let's have a conversation one-on-one first, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Brilliant. It all starts with a conversation. Peter, thank you so much. I'll catch you soon.
Looking forward to. Thank you, Steve. It's a real pleasure. Take care.
Same. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.